Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Chris, and I would like to continue with the Kundalini series that I've started a couple of episodes ago. So one of the things I wanted to discuss first is what I actually do before I start doing one of these videos. And so I always make sure that I meditate beforehand and that I'm in a state where I actually channel the power of Kundalini Shakti. So it's this energy that flows through me, which actually is an interesting thing because Kundalini Shakti itself, it rises from the bottom like this, but there's actually divine grace involved. So there's an energy that descends from heaven. And this is very difficult to talk about because it's something you have to experience yourself. And it's a very real thing. And it just moves you to the core. And there is this energy that descends from heaven. And of course, we don't really know what heaven is, but if you look within, if you look into your heart, you know what heaven is. It's in you. Because we talk about it all the time, you know. We talk about being in seventh heaven. Something is heavenly. I feel like I'm in heaven. So we actually know what it is. It's this place, the state of mind, the state of being, which is accessible to everyone, but it's like the best version of everything. So it's where you have the most joy, the most happiness, bliss, pleasure, feeling of love. So it's this place where you are the happiest. And so why do we imagine heaven to be in the sky, in the clouds? Why is it white, maybe a bit blue with the sky above us? And this usually, we imagine people wearing white robes, maybe angels with blonde hair, a lot of gold, like a golden gate. And so this is actually a way in which we express the energies, the vibrations of heaven. So we get this image in our head and we create something out of it. So we create images, cartoons, movies, but it's really about this vibration. So this is what this actually represents. So there is this vibration of gold and maybe a bit of silver, just white fluffiness and a bit of blue, sky blue. And this is a particular energy. It's a vibrational construct that we can actually reach. So this is something that everyone strives to. So we all want to get there. We just don't know how. And the funny thing is that Kundalini, it's actually a way to heaven. You could say it's like a ladder to heaven, which is why in a lot of different traditions, well, there is Jacob's ladder, of course, which is a Jewish mythological version, where each step takes you closer to this place of light and love. But it's also the Kabbalistic tree of life. The tree of life has always been a map of the human energy system with the chakras and the nadis and whatnot. And if you actually look at a Kabbalistic tree of life, you can count approximately 7 energy centers if you go at the middle of the tree. And then there are some side centers as well, but there's actually 7 that are in the middle. And so in this way, the Kabbalistic tree of life is actually the same map of the human body that you also see in yoga with the 7 main chakras. And then there are quite a few side chakras all over the body. And all of them have different importance and role to play in our lives. So they are all important in different ways, which I'm not going to go into in this series. It's not really that important. But I just wanted you to know that the chakras, the centers, are important. And so talking about heaven, what do you actually find in heaven? What do you find in this place which we perceive to be above us physically? Well, it's really not, because it's all around us, it surrounds us, it's in our hearts, it's everywhere. And I can speculate from a scientific viewpoint, like I have in my previous video about higher dimensions and astral realms and the spectrum of light we can't actually see because it's dark matter and dark energy, and it's now believed to be liquid light actually. So the spectrum of the universe that's invisible to us, we actually know now that it's made up of liquid light. So what can you actually find in heaven? What's there? Is it inhabited by beings, by entities? Angels, gods? What goes on there? And so this is the great question that mystics and prophets and priests have been trying to answer for millennia now. And I can't say that I'm any closer to the truth than they are, but I've had some observations. So I would actually like to talk about my interactions with heavenly beings. And this was actually made possible by my Kundalini awakening. And if you've seen my interview with Jeff on the Jeff Mara podcast, then you will actually know that this was a very important part of my awakening, because I was actually helped by a heavenly being. In fact, she is known as the Queen of Heaven. And of course, she's not the only one. There are different heavenly beings, and people talk about meeting angels and archangels and gods and deities and maybe even fairies. So these are just different beings that exist in higher realities. In truth, this is actually a higher dimensional space-time, in fact, because even the relationship to time is different than what we're used to. It doesn't exist in the same way that it exists in our reality. And this comes from the higher dimensional nature of these higher realities. And I mean this in terms of how a string theorist like Michio Kaku would describe it. So it's a reality that exists in more dimensions than ours, which is really only 3-dimensional. And there's a 4th dimension which we are hurtled along. So it's like being stuck in a river of time. That is the 4th dimension for us. We're not really in it. We just observe change in our 3-dimensional reality, and that's how we can sort of surmise that there is a 4th dimension, which is time. But there are more dimensions than that. So scientists say up to 11 or maybe even more than that. I think there are actually an infinite number of dimensions from what I have seen. And so when you go to heaven, you exit your body through the crown chakra, or more precisely through the mount of heaven, this opening at the top back part of the head, somewhere here. And that's why it's important for Kundalini to pierce this opening. And this is something that happened to me in December 2012. And since that time, I've been able to interact with heavenly beings, more or less. Not just heavenly beings, some of them are from the lower astral. And not all of my interactions and meetings have been pleasant, I have to say. Because some astral beings, they come from the so-called lower astral. And they are not always benevolent. Some of them can be quite destructive or even malevolent. So that's an unfortunate reality that we have to face, because we are not alone in this universe, and we are not at the top of the food chain. So when you first venture out into this astral reality, when you open yourself up to the lower astral especially, which is something that can be quite dangerous, you are a bit helpless and powerless. So it's like putting a baby out on the savannah, basically, so, or in the jungle. There are predators out there, and you have to learn how to manage this, how to navigate this new reality. And I believe it's actually not as bad as a lot of people perceive it to be, because a lot of people who are not prepared for this, who don't have the right energy, the right vibration, they attract the wrong kind of attention. But if you learn to raise your vibrations through the right lifestyle, meditation, building up your energies, and Kundalini is actually a pretty important component of this, then you are your own agent. You take control of your own life, your own destiny. And you are not a helpless victim, because the power of Kundalini, it can be used for many things, but it can also shield you from negative influences. And it can give you the power to drive away entities and beings that you don't want to interact with, because they will approach you. So, if you enter into this spiritual realm, the spirit world, and you have a Kundalini that's recently been activated, they will see it. It's like a beacon of light, and it shines into their reality, and they will see you, and they will try to get hold of you, and try to convince you to do different things for them, or to join their cause or whatnot. And so it's important to know this in advance and to recognize these beings for what they are, and not to be deceived by their advances, because they can tell you different things that are not actually true. So it's a sort of deception, or maybe it's only half true. But you have to accept reality as it is, even if it is not always pleasant. So once you are in the spirit world, then you have to move past this lower astral realm, and you have to move up. And that is where you will find higher beings that are, actually they call themselves the denizens of heaven. So all these different life forms that inhabit what we call heaven, this higher realm. And like I said, there's all sorts of beings there, and there appears to be a sort of hierarchy as well. But the one I'm most familiar with is Inanna, who is known as the Queen of Heaven. That's what her name means in Sumerian. And Lady of Heaven would be an even closer translation. And so I'm actually convinced that most people, when they have visitations or apparitions of various heavenly ladies, lady of this, lady of that, you know, we've heard a lot of stories about different apparitions. I think, you know, the fundamental force behind it is the same. It's just the same energy and consciousness expressing herself in different ways, depending on what you're used to and what you're ready for. So, like I said, my own interactions were with the Queen of Heaven, and there is this incredible energy that you just have to experience, which artists actually try to express in different ways when they paint goddesses and you know, the Virgin Mary, and even the Queen of Heaven as a title that's still used in Catholicism, for instance. But it's just this energy that's I wish I could describe it to you, but the only way to really experience it is to accept it into your heart. So if you accept the Queen of Heaven into your heart, she will touch you, and she will help you with your spiritual progress or whatever else you might need help with. And so for me, she has been the main guide, or even conduit into heaven. But there are others, you know. I've come across archangels from time to time when people actually, you know, wanted me to channel them or had questions to them. And there are other deities and gods, like I came across some Hindu gods as well, for instance, and the Sumerian ones that I mentioned. And so heaven is real, would be my main message. And it can be reached by anyone, but you have to be careful. You have to have your wits about you. because this is a recurring theme. Whenever somebody reaches enlightenment or awakens in some manner, there's always going to be temptation and sort of demonic forces that want to pull you back towards the ground, that want to stop you from reaching your full spiritual potential. So they will try to recruit you to their side and, tell you different nice sounding things about you're going to be this, I'm going to be that, even lie about you and what you are and what you can achieve. So that's just unfortunate, but you have to ignore it. And the important thing is to have real love in your heart, real divine love. To not have conceit and arrogance in your heart. Instead, you should have this unconditional divine love that descends from heaven and is something that you can send out and extend to everyone else. And you can essentially make them happy, because this is the only thing that can make a human being truly happy. We try, different things, material, I don't even know what to call them, material replacements, I would say. So things that really aren't good enough, and we know it. Whether it's buying a car or jewelry or new clothes or whatever it might be, we try to replace our spiritual gifts with material gifts, but it never works. Because the only thing that actually works is the gift of heaven, which is love. And so it's this heavenly love, this divine love, that we must all accept into our hearts and then send it out to others. Give it out to others freely. And that's what we are all trying to do in our lives in the end. And that's what we all try to achieve, to be conduits of divine love. Even if we don't know it, or we do things for reasons that are not really clear to us, we might think it's actually a selfish reason. But the actual motivation behind all of our actions is this desire to reunite with the divine, to feel this divine love and to be one with it, to be filled with it. So this divine light is what we are actually looking for, and it's in all of us. And it can heal us from trauma and from depression, from sickness, from disease. Whatever it is that ails us, divine love can plug the hole that's in our hearts, and it can actually restore our energy bodies and our souls to its former glory, the way it has always existed in heaven. Because heaven is our home, and it's also our destination. So it's important to try and achieve our true potential by putting ourselves, our souls, our hearts, into this mode where we are back in heaven. So we want to exist in this reality, this eternal realm, where you could say that everything is perfect, but that's not really the right word for it. But everything is true. Everything is love. That is real reality. So that's what actually exists all over the whole universe, not just in our reality and our dimensions, but everywhere. And this material world is actually just a very small sliver. So what we must do is to actually try and find this true reality, this higher dimension, and try to reach it. And all of us have this within us. So I would say that meditation is probably the best way to do it, but there are lots of different ways to reach heaven. And I'm not going to discuss any particular methods here, because we all have our own paths. And some people just receive divine grace. They just pray and they open their hearts, and there they are. That's actually how it usually happens with Christians, for instance, with Christian saints, for instance. But there are other ways, different people in different cultures have achieved heaven on earth in different ways. And it's possible to do it if you have true desire in your heart, and if you do everything within your power to receive the gifts of heaven, to put your ego aside, be less arrogant, less conceited, less self-centered, and just try to open yourself up to heavenly forces and the gifts of heaven, and serving others, and serving heaven, basically, which is an important component. And then if you do that, you can actually achieve what you are sent here to do. Because I believe that we are all here to spread the word of heaven, the love of heaven. Because most people, they only experience it briefly during their lives. There are fleeting moments when they see heaven, or they feel like they are in heaven. They experience this unconditional divine love, this joy, this bliss. But it's a state that we can actually live in, that we can exist in. We can make it permanent in our lives. And when we do that, well, there's no other destination for us after we die but heaven, because we are already there. So it's just a question of shedding this body and then existing only in heaven and no longer on earth. So I believe that is the destination of every living thing on this planet and in this universe. And we are going to achieve it. It's just a question of time. And that's our destiny anyway. So it's up to us whether we do what is required to fulfill our destiny. So that's it for today. I wanted to talk a little bit about heaven and how it relates to Kundalini and the chakras and the energy body and whatnot. So I hope you like this episode. And I'm going to continue with this Kundalini series and other topics in upcoming videos. So if you haven't subscribed yet, then please do. And thanks very much for listening.